Welcome to Furious Driving, and today I have a question for you. It's the late 1980s, your tartan rug and collection of boiled sweets needs a new home. What glove box are you going to park them in? Is it going to be an Orion? Is it going to be a Vauxhall Belmont? You want three boxes and you want reliability. It's got to be a Nissan. Let's go and look at a Nissan Sunny. Did that on purpose, obviously. So this is an N13 Nissan Sunny, also known as a Nissan Cherry or a Pulsar or various other things depending whereabouts you are in the world. It was exported globally under a variety of names. It was made from 1986 to 1991 and added to the general confusion of the Nissan small to mid-sized car lineup. Just mess, frankly. They had about 6 different basic platforms running where Ford just had Fiesta and Escort. And so I'll try and explain this with an on-camera graphic and some off-camera talking, because honestly I've been through this several times with the owner of this car. This is Joseph Lloyd from Lloyd's Vehicle Consulting, who has finally managed to work out the structure of this family tree. And he's explained it to me with the diagrams, and I still can't quite figure it out. So I'll try and see if I can help you with it right now.
Nope, still couldn't figure it out. But in short, there were multiple versions of most versions of the car, so there were competing versions of Sunny, Estates, Coupes and Saloons, all fighting against each other in the same dealerships. It was a very confusing lineup.
So, there were a variety of engines, 1 litre, 1.3, a couple, in fact 3 1.6s and a 1.8 in the GTI form. That is a really slow electric window. This though is a 1.6 litre with a carburettor on it still, quite remarkably, in the 1980s. But this is a car that was aimed, I think, really at reliability and traditional buyers. And it's a lovely thing to drive. I mean, the nearest competitor I can think of in my mind is going to be a Ford Orion. And it drives, I would say, a bit more comfortably, a bit more refined than a Ford Orion. What lets it down though is the way it feels a little bit primitive in certain places. Yes, you've got electric windows all around, you've got electric sunroof, you've got power steering, and the brakes, I'm going to hit the brakes quite hard. It's got some brakes, apparently. Well, it's a really nice car to drive. It's engineered impeccably. You know it's never going to break down. But you don't have the nice surfaces. The Rover 200 has got the nice bits of wood and the nice feeling dashboard. And the Ford has got, okay, he's got the horrible tweed on the lower spec ones, but you've got nicer fabrics on the upper specs. This is as nice as it gets before the sporty ones, but it still feels a little bit plasticky and basic. However, it does drive beautifully. This gearbox is really incredible. You know, I'm not a fan of an automatic, I say it literally every time, don't you forget it. But a bad manual gearbox is still a bad manual gearbox. This though is lovely. It's a light flick from one gear to the next. There's just enough mechanical resistance in between ratios to know that you're doing something. And the pedals are also really nice. It's a 5-speed gearbox, the clutch isn't too heavy, and nicely spaced, and a good position for my feet as well. Driving along these country lanes today, the visibility is just absolutely epic. Big glass area, reasonably low shoulder line, nice airy feeling with the sunroof. What a lovely car to be in. If you follow Lloyd's Vehicle Consulting channel, you may know this car already because Joseph has done a fair amount of work to it, including replacing the engine. Unfortunately, what they thought was going to be head issues turned out to be the big end had failed. So it's actually running a 50,000 mile engine in it. So the car is 35 years old, but the engine is barely run in. Right, so let me show you around the outside of the Sunny. And isn't it a pretty little thing? I love this light metallic blue colour, it's fabulous. Now the first thing you're going to notice about this car is just how square and angular and boxy it is. They've really been to the Volvo school of design for this car. Bear in mind, this car came out in 1986. We already had the Mark III Cavalier, the new Sierra, all these new bubbly jelly mold cars were coming out, but Nissan were really courting a traditional kind of buyer. Bear in mind, still a 3-box saloon, not a hatchback, but we've got 4 doors, we've got square edges, we've got this fabulous wraparound side marker lights. This thing is just amazing, isn't it? And just Just drink it in. But underneath this boxy, traditional, utilitarian, old-fashionedness, it's actually quite a modern car. Ignore the carburetors, that's not modern. The rest of them did have fuel injection. We've got movable mirrors. We've got power windows. It even says so on the door, power window. We've got an aerial built into the A-post because, well, that's not really modern at all either, is it? It's even got an electric sunroof. In fact, squint at it from this kind of angle, it almost looks like a Lego version of a Ford Orion, because you've got this same kind of stepping up, stepping down, stepping up into the boot, with actually the same crease on the C-post as an Orion. Even these hubcaps are like a diesel or base model Orion as well. Interesting design influences on this car. And also, the thing you might be thinking is, was this built in Sunderland? Because anything that's like an 80s, 90s Nissan, people go, oh, Sunderland built. Not these ones, these bad boys came from Japan. So here, under the bonnet, we have this blistering ball of fire, the E16S triangle engine, thanks to its, well, named as such because its Toblerone pattern across the front of the rocker cover. This is the 1.6 with, incredibly, a carburettor still. At this point in history, a carb engine, I can't believe it. But this wasn't the only option. Most of Europe got everything between a 1.3 and a 1.8 in various trim levels. But in certain parts of the world, like Greece for example, where tax is very heavily weighted on engine size, there was even a 1 litre version. There were actually other versions of the 1.6 as well, but this though, thankfully, is the lower power one, making 86 horsepower. Right, let's take a look around the inside of this car because it is quite interesting. This is the GSX, which is the top-end luxury car, avoiding the sporty versions. This is the comfy one, but it is a little bit hair shirt, despite the fact it's got a lot of optional extras in here. So on the driver's door, we've got vinyl sort of padded elephant hide. We've got a not padded armrest. We've got some tweed, got a door handle. We have got 4 electric windows and power locking as well. Door unlock, door lock. And we've also got a fairly sizable door pocket, which is quite cool, and a big speaker. Looking inside, we've got the pull and push for the boot and the fuel flap. Always seems to be there on Japanese cars. And these seats are very, like following the Orion thing on. I remember fairly basic Orions in the 1980s were very similar in terms of their seat fabric. This is quite cool. This is 1980s graph paper design with that lovely little pink highlight in there and the light blue. Fantastic. I love a 1980s tweed. Stepping inside, we've got a number of awesome T-shelf options. We've got a large flat area in front of the driver for one thing, and we've got a little trough, a T-area trough. No good for putting your mugs down, but ideal if you've got things like polos or Smarties or any other round snack-based food, like Revels for example. They're going to roll away. Put them in your snack trough. Perfect. And a mug area in the centre as well for the driver, and a mug area on the left to your right. This is a great picnic mobile. I love how the clock itself is relatively small, quite tiny in the middle, but the buttons are enormous and the writing telling you how to adjust the clock is even bigger. I think you have more space dedicated to adjusting the clock than the clock itself, which I find quite amusing. Coming back to the driver's area, we do have this quite fun shielded, very kind of Blade Runner kind of science fiction-y area around the dials, making the whole thing look very interesting. So we've got this air vent here, which looks like some kind of spaceship ventilation system going on just there. Got a rear screen heater button blended into the top of that, and maybe a front fog light button just there, rear screen heater there, and a blank for something else just there. In the centre we have got our usual bank of fairly simple controls. We've got a few warning lights, which are always there, but then illuminated when the car comes on. Got fuel, speed, revs, temperature, all you need. Moving back, we've got a very, very futuristic looking Nissan steering wheel. I think it's the same steering wheel we find in the EXA, which is a spin-off from this generation, I believe. But that's quite fun. That's a 3-spoke wheel, which again looks very kind of 1980s sci-fi. But the horn is on the centre rim. Wow, that's a multinational PARP, which is currently deafening Mr. Lloyd over there. A PARP that says it's going to take you to your nearest local railway station and not break down whilst doing so. Behind that though, we've got some really cool switch gear, which is not a sentence I say very often. We've got the wipers on the left and the indicators on the right, as is often the way with Japanese cars. We have this lovely dying beagle sound when you put these on. Oh, I'm not going to make it! That's the lights on warning. And on the left hand side, on the wipers, we've got the same knurled thing, which looks like a bit of sort of high-end hi-fi made out of plastic. This is your intermittent speed for your wipers, but don't just check that out. Check out that little blue gauge. It's the mechanically moving slider inside there. Isn't that the coolest thing you've ever seen? That's so good. Behind that we have got a fog light switch, which looks slightly afterthoughty, but then because these were imported by a separate importer to Nissan, weirdly, this might have been added here in the UK. We've got our lovely simple slider based ventilation system. We've got a big old ashtray, we've got our 12-volt socket, we've got a basic radio cassette player, and then we've got a random drawer area for putting stuff. Little cubby hole just there, nice 5-speed gearbox, we'll find out what that's like in a moment, and a mechanical handbrake, and another ashtray, because you can't smoke too much in the 1980s, apparently. Up above we've got an electric sunroof. Check out this nodule, this nubbin that you use for opening the sunroof. This entire separate construction coming down here with the word sunroof. I love how in 1980s cars you have this big block typing just telling you what everything does. There's no doubt or ambivalence about what things could be. And some absolutely huge sun visors as well. That's the sunroof. Let's have a quick look in the back. Right, I went and stupidly put stuff in the back of the car, so I'm not going to climb in, but we have got split folding seats. We've got the same slightly rattly plastic door handle, but more electric windows with very, very basic, don't make a mistake, this is up, this is down, giant writing on it. The boot on this thing is surprisingly capacious, I guess because you've got panelling to the side, but not a great deal of it, and it goes right out into the edges. It's a good sized boot on a relatively small car. We even have a lovely original Nissan car combi bag. Warning vests, first aid kit, triangle, a cool little thing that velcros into the corner of your Sunny's glove box or boot.
With the carbureted 1.6, and it's a Hitachi carb by the way, 0 to 60 is 11.7 seconds and top speed 106, and it should make 38 mpg. Performance was respectable if not earth-shattering, but it drives really nicely, and back in the 1980s were one of the most reliable cars on the road. It was an open secret. If you wanted an unbreakably reliable car with decent quality at reasonable prices, buy a Nissan. That's why you saw so many Nissan Sunny and Datsun Bluebird taxi cabs back in the day. You just needed to not worry too much about style. You'd be amazed how few of these you saw at Paris Fashion Week.
When the hatchback was kind of taking over, as opposed to where the SUV is taking over from the hatchback, the 3-box saloon was kind of regarded as a bit of a status symbol. You didn't need a hatchback, you weren't carrying your own heavy luggage and shifting things. You had people for that. You could afford to have a saloon to drive around in. And of course the older generations who'd grown up with saloons, they wanted the thing they were used to. So cars like this were marketed to and bought by an older generation who looked after their cars. In terms of performance, it admittedly isn't blistering. 1.6 litres is a reasonable sized engine and it's not a heavy car, but the carburettor is a very different kind of driving. You can hear the thing. It gives an old Mark II Escort kind of a sound as it rattles through the gears. It would be interesting to drive the injected version side by side with the carbureted just to feel the difference in the torque curves. There's one curious little thing you notice with this car every now and then, and that's almost a little stutter as you're driving. And that's to do with the carburettor and the fuel feed, and it all has been checked over by a really good mechanic in the last few weeks. But it's just a characteristic of the car. Every now and then, it will just be a little stutter on the power. And it's just the way the car runs. It's just a characteristic, a quirk, maybe even a feature, if you will. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this ride out in this incredible survivor of an example of a car you don't really see anymore. If you've enjoyed this, please, as always, like and subscribe. Join us again next time driving something completely different.